Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The wind over Winterfell carried the chill of old ghosts. It whispered through the broken towers and tugged at the banners of the direwolf, as if testing their resolve to remain. Beneath that cold, gray sky, Arya Stark rode through the open gates for the first time since her long wandering, and though she had crossed half the world, no road had felt so heavy as this one. The courtyard was quieter than she remembered. Snow had begun to fall again, soft and silent, coating the stone in white. Grooms came to take her horse, and guards nodded in respect, yet all their faces blurred in her mind. Too many faces, too many she had worn. Bran was Lord of Winterfell now, and when Arya stood before him in the Great Hall, she felt smaller than she had in years. He sat in his chair of dark weirwood, his eyes knowing too much. "You came home," he said, his voice distant, as if half his mind still walked the past. "But your heart is uneasy." Arya's hand brushed the hilt of needle. "There are whispers in the north," she replied, "of a man who kills without leaving a trace. They say he takes the faces of his victims. I've heard tales of such things before." Bran's gaze deepened, far away and near at once. "The many-faced god has long arms, but this man does not serve him." Her breath caught. A rogue, faceless man. She had thought herself free of Braavos, free of the dark halls beneath the house of black and white. But the name of that god still stirred unease in her chest. "If he's killing Northmen, he's my problem." Bran's eyes moved to her sword. "Be careful, Arya. Vengeance is an old companion of yours, but she does not always walk where honor treads." Arya said nothing. She turned and left the hall, the cold wrapping around her like armor. The next morning, she rode out with only her horse and her cloak. Sansa had begged her to stay. Winterfell needed its pack together, but Arya's path had always led her away from hearth and home. She followed rumor and blood sign from hamlet to hamlet until she reached the village of Torrhen's Square. There, she found the first body. It was a blacksmith's boy, no older than 14, his throat cut with surgical precision. The villagers had found him in the forge, slumped over an anvil, a look of confusion frozen on his face. No weapon missing, no signs of struggle, only the stillness of death and the eerie emptiness of his eyes. Arya examined the wound herself. It was clean, too clean. "Not the work of a butcher or thief," she muttered. "He didn't fight back. He never saw it coming." The innkeeper crossed himself in fear. "The boy said he saw his mother in the woods last night, but she's been dead 2 years." Arya looked up sharply. Did he now? Her heart tightened. A face used to deceive, to draw the living close before the strike. She had seen the trick before, in Braavos. That night, Arya didn't sleep. She sat in the corner of the inn, back to the wall, watching every shadow, every flicker of the hearth. The candlelight seemed to shift and change, shapes that were not quite right. She told herself it was only her mind playing tricks. But near midnight, the door opened without a sound. A figure stepped in, hooded, gloved, silent as snowfall. Arya's hand went to needle, but something in her chest told her to wait. The stranger moved toward the bar, and for a heartbeat, she saw their face under the hood. Her breath froze. It was her own. The stranger looked up, met her eyes, and smiled with her mouth. Then the candlelight flickered out. When the light returned, the stranger was gone, Only a single coin lay on the table before her, a thin disk of iron, stamped with the sigil of the many-faced god. Arya turned it over between her fingers. The Bravosi phrase whispered through her memory, Valar Morghulis, all men must die. But she knew this coin was no offering. It was a warning. At dawn, she searched the woods behind the inn. Footprints vanished after a few paces, as though the figure had melted into mist. Still, she found something half buried beneath the snow, a mask, flesh-like and pale, its eyes empty sockets of horror. She knelt beside it, her fingers trembling as she brushed the snow away. The face was unfamiliar, but not to her training. She remembered the forbidden alcove in the house of black and white, sealed by the priests, where certain faces were kept apart. Faces too dangerous to wear, bound by oaths even the faceless men feared to break. And she remembered the one time she had dared to look, a face pale as death, eyes like her own. The priests had caught her and whispered, "That is a face you shall never wear, child, not even in death." Now, it seemed that face had come to Westeros. Arya rose, tightening her cloak. The snow fell harder now, and through the veil of white, she saw the dark outline of the road ahead. Somewhere out there was the rogue who had taken the forbidden face. And if he wore her likeness, then she would hunt herself. The storm followed Arya down the King's Road, a curtain of white that swallowed sound and shape. Her horse moved carefully, hooves crunching through the frost, steam rising from its flanks like breath from a ghost. The world had gone gray and silent, and only Arya's thoughts kept her company. She could not rid herself of the memory of that stolen face, the same pale flesh, the same dark hair, the same shadow of her own smile. The many-faced god had many servants, but few who dared break the sacred rules. Whoever had done this was not just a killer. He was a heretic among assassins, a blasphemer who defied even death's order. By nightfall, she reached a burned-out holdfast by the river. The place was long deserted, just charred walls and the bones of a hearth. She made a small fire and sat close to it, warming her hands. Her cloak was damp, her fingers numb, yet she found no comfort in the heat. The coin she had found gleamed faintly beside her, its surface catching the firelight like an eye that never blinked. She turned it over and whispered, "Who are you?" The answer came not from the dark, but from her memory. "A girl is no one," the voices of the faceless men whispered through her mind. "A girl must obey. A girl must forget herself." But Arya Stark had never truly forgotten. She had left her name behind once, buried under the masks of the dead, but it had clawed its way back, fierce as the wolves of her house. A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell, she thought, and she remembers. The fire cracked softly, snow pressed against the ruined walls, and far off, a branch snapped, a clean, sharp sound that did not belong to the wind. Arya rose at once, moving silently to the edge of the firelight. Her hand closed around Needle's hilt. Another sound, a step on the frozen earth. Then another. Someone was moving through the ruins, slow and deliberate. She waited until the shadow came into view. A tall figure wrapped in dark wool, his hood drawn low. "Who's there?" she called. The figure paused, then spoke in a calm, low voice. "A friend." She frowned. "You're far from any road. Friends don't come calling at burnt keeps in the middle of the night." The stranger took another step forward, the firelight touching the edge of his cloak. "Nor do enemies, if they mean to live long." Arya's sword flashed free. "Show your face." The stranger hesitated, then drew back the hood. His features were lean, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion. but not fear. "You've grown, little wolf," he said quietly. She blinked, lowering her blade an inch. "Jaqen?" The man smiled faintly. "A man has worn many names since you last saw him. But yes, once he was called Jaqen Hagar." Her heart thudded. "You shouldn't be here." "And yet here a man stands," he said, glancing around the ruins. "You follow a trail that leads to death, Arya Stark." "You should have stayed in the north. You know about him," she said. Jaqen nodded. "The one who steals forbidden faces. He was an acolyte once, a man of promise, quick to learn, slow to obey. He took what was not his to take and fled the temple. The priests sent whispers after him, but no one could find him, until now." Arya's eyes narrowed. "He's using my face." Jaqen's expression did not change, but his voice grew quieter. "There are faces in the house that no one must wear. Yours is one of them. Why?" He shook his head. "Because death refused it. You were meant to die and did not. The god's gift was denied, and so your face became cursed. To wear it is to mock the balance." The fire hissed. Arya's thoughts tangled like thorns. Cursed? Denied? She remembered the priests whispering prayers as they touched her cheek after the Hall of Faces. Remembered the cold hand that brushed her brow and found her unready. "So this man wears a cursed face," she said. "Then he'll die for it." "Perhaps," Jaqen said softly. "But he hunts not for gold or vengeance. He hunts for you." At dawn they rode together, leaving the ruins behind. The snow had thinned, revealing frozen streams and the broken line of the road south. As they traveled, Jaqen told her more. The rogue assassin had been called the Orphan once, a nameless foundling taken from the streets of Pentos, trained in Bravos to wear silence like a cloak. But unlike Arya, he had no past to reclaim, and so he grew hungry for one. He stole faces forbidden even to the priests, seeking to become someone the god himself could not claim. Arya listened, her jaw tight. And now he's here. Why? "Perhaps he wishes to finish what the god began," Jaqen said, "to give death to the one who escaped it." Arya's hand brushed the hilt of her sword. "Let him try." They reached the Riverlands by nightfall, following the whispers of dead men. A patrol of Frey soldiers had been found murdered near the ruins of Harrenhal, their bodies lined neatly as if prepared for burial. Their faces were gone. Arya's stomach twisted when she saw them. Not from pity, she had killed Freys before, but from the precision of the work. It was the hand of a faceless man, without question. She searched the corpses for clues, and on the captain's armor, she found a mark drawn in dried blood, the outline of a wolf's head, but twisted, the muzzle flayed away. "He's mocking you," Jaqen said. Arya stood. "Then I'll answer him." That night, as campfires flickered in the shadow of Harrenhal's broken towers, Arya dreamt she walked the Hall of Faces again. The torches burned cold, and the rows of dead faces watched her without eyes. At the far end, she saw the forbidden mask, her own, and beside it, another now missing. A man's face, blank and bloodless, leaving behind a dark void in the wall. She heard a whisper, "Come and see, little wolf." When she turned, her reflection waited in the dark, smiling with her mouth, speaking with her voice. "You cannot kill what is already dead," the double said. Arya's hand reached for her sword, but in the dream she had none, only her own empty shadow, stretching longer than it should. She woke before dawn, the echo of the whisper still in her ears. Jaqen was gone, and beside her lay a scrap of parchment, folded once. She opened it with trembling fingers. In neat Bravosi script, it read, "At sunset, Come to the Godswood of Harrenhal. Bring no one. The face you fear awaits you." Arya folded the note and rose. The first light of morning spilled over the towers, painting the ruins in gold and gray. She felt no fear now, only a strange calm. If death had come wearing her face, then she would meet it with her own. The day crawled by in sullen silence. The ruins of Harrenhal loomed vast and empty, black stone rising like the ribs of some long-dead beast. Ravens wheeled above the broken towers, their cries sharp as knives. Arya moved through the wreckage like a shadow, her steps silent upon the frost. Harrenhal had always smelled of ash and ghosts. She had been a servant here once, years ago, scrubbing floors and fetching water for men who had laughed as others burned. The place was cursed, and even now its stones seemed to breathe sorrow. Yet it was the perfect ground for what she came to do. Two killers meeting in the house of death. The Godswood lay beyond a tangle of fallen walls, where the heart tree grew twisted and pale beside a stagnant pool. The red leaves rustled faintly, though there was no wind. Arya crouched at the edge of the clearing, eyes sweeping the shadows. No movement, no sound but the slow drip of water from the ruined towers. She waited. The sun began to sink, its orange light slipping through the cracks of the broken keep. The air grew colder, heavier. Then she heard it, a faint crunch of boots upon the snow. The figure stepped into view, cloaked in gray, tall, slender, moving with the stillness of a predator. The hood fell back, and Arya's heart stilled. It was her face. Her own eyes stared back at her, colder than she remembered them. The mouth curved into a smile that was not hers. "Who are you?" she asked. The double tilted her head. "You know who I am." The voice was Arya's, clear and low. "I am the girl who was promised to the god, and the girl who fled. I am the death you denied." Arya gripped Needle tighter. "You're not me." "No," said the other, "but I am what you would have become if you had stayed." They circled each other in the fading light. The heart tree loomed behind them, its face carved in weeping red sap. Shadows lengthened, and the Godswood seemed to hold its breath. "You were trained to kill without question," said the false Arya. "To give up your name, your face, your heart. And yet you ran. You thought you could steal death's gift and live as Arya Stark again." "I didn't steal anything," she said. "I chose to live." Her double smile widened. "Then let us see which choice the many-faced god favors." The fight began without warning. Steel flashed in the gloom, quick and deadly. The false Arya's movements were perfect, each strike, each feint, a reflection of Arya's own training. Their blades met with sharp, ringing cries, sparks scattering across the snow. Arya ducked low, swept to the side, but her opponent moved like water, matching her step for step. "Too slow," the double murmured. Arya gritted her teeth and lunged, their swords locked. She shoved forward, close enough to see the fine details of the other's face. Her own face, painted with the faintest scar above the brow, the same one she bore from Braavos. "This isn't your face," Arya hissed. "You stole it." The other laughed softly. "You can't steal what the god has already claimed." With a twist, the false Arya broke the lock and slashed. The blade grazed Arya's shoulder, slicing through her cloak. She fell back, breath sharp in the cold air. Think. The faceless men fought like dancers, not brawlers. Every motion meant something. Every step was measured. She feinted left, drew the double's guard, and then struck low, stabbing for the ribs. The false Arya twisted aside, but the point of needle caught flesh. A dark stain spread across the gray cloak. The double looked down at the wound, then back up, smiling. "You bleed for me, as it should be." She raised her sword again, but then the air changed. The shadows deepened. The red leaves trembled. The weirwood's face seemed to shift, its carved eyes widening as if in pain. A whisper ran through the godswood, neither wind nor voice, but something between. Arya felt it in her bones, a presence, vast and cold, pressing down upon her. The double froze too, her head turning slowly toward the tree. "He watches," she whispered. The many-faced god watches. Then, as quickly as it came, the weight lifted. Arya saw her chance and struck. Her sword drove forward, straight through the false Arya's heart. The figure gasped, eyes wide in shock. For a heartbeat, the world was silent. Then the body shuddered and fell. Arya stepped back, chest heaving. Blood steamed against the snow. The face of her enemy was already changing, melting, slipping away like wax in fire. Beneath it was not her reflection, but a stranger's, a young man's face, thin and pale, with eyes the color of dark honey. "The orphan," she whispered. The man's lips twitched, forming words she could barely hear. "You think you won." His body convulsed, then stilled. Arya stood over him, her breath misting in the cold. She waited, half expecting him to rise again, but he did not. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves above. She knelt, prying the false skin from his lifeless hand. The face was cold now, its features still and empty. It felt no different from the masks she had handled in Braavos, save for one thing. It was hers. She looked into its blank eyes, and a tremor ran through her. For a moment, she thought she saw the face twitch, the lips move, but when she blinked, it was still again. "Burn it," she told herself. "Burn it and be done." Yet when she built a small fire by the weirwood and cast the mask into the flames, it did not burn. The fire licked at it, but the flesh did not blacken or melt. It only seemed to breathe, as though alive, and then the fire went out. Arya stared at the cold ashes. The mask lay untouched within them. The wind rose, stirring the snow into whirls around her. Far above, a raven croaked once, then fell silent. She sheathed her sword. There was no more she could do tonight. But as she turned to leave the godswood, she heard something that stopped her heart. A whisper, faint and soft as breath against her ear. "You cannot burn what death has claimed." Arya spun, but no one stood behind her. Only the trees and the dying light. And when she looked back to the ashes, the mask was gone. Dawn broke cold and colorless over Harrenhal. Mist clung to the blackened towers, and the crows had begun to circle again, silent, patient witnesses to all that died here. Arya sat upon a cracked stone near the godswood pool, her cloak drawn tight, the breath of morning steaming from her lips. She had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the mask in the ashes, saw it staring up through the dying embers, unburned, unbroken. By the time the sun's pale edge rose over the river, she had made her choice. She would not flee. If the many-faced god still reached for her, then she would meet his hand with steel. When she left the godswood, the ruins were not as empty as she had thought. A faint trail of prints led through the frost. Fresh, light, deliberate. Someone had come in the night. She followed. The tracks wound through the fallen halls and out into the courtyard, where a single horse waited, tethered to a post of broken iron. A rider sat upon a nearby wall, his face hidden beneath a dark hood. Arya's hand went to her sword. "Jaqen," she said. The hood lifted. A man had hoped you would yet live. I lived, she said, but the orphan didn't. Jaqen inclined his head slightly. Then the god was merciful. Arya stepped closer. No, he wasn't. The orphan used a forbidden face. Mine. When I burned it, it would not burn. Something flickered in Jaqen's eyes, the faintest glimmer of unease. The god takes what he is owed, and he does not forget. If the face survived the flame, then death still clings to it. He whispered to me, Arya said quietly. When I turned away, it was gone. Jaqen said nothing for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice had gone low and taut. Then the game is not ended. The orphan may have died, but the face may yet find another to wear it. Arya's jaw tightened. Then I'll find it first. A man could help you, Jaqen said softly. But the price would not be small. I've paid enough, she said. He regarded her for a long moment, then reached into his cloak and drew out a small pouch. From it, he took a coin, blacker than night, stamped with a single teardrop. If you seek the truth, you must go where it began. The face was not made in Braavos alone. It was taken from a corpse in the ruins of Old Town, an acolyte of the Citadel who delved into arts forbidden even to them. Old Town, Arya repeated. Jaqen nodded. The orphan sought the secrets of death there before he fled to the temple. He learned much that should have been left buried. Follow his path, and you will find the mask's true master. Arya frowned. If he is dead, who could that be? The one who gave him the face, Jaqen said. The whisperer in the dark. There is always another hand behind the blade. She took the coin, feeling the weight of it press into her palm. And if I find him, then death will find you both, Jaqen said, and turned away. The road south was long and bitter. Snow gave way to mud as the days passed, the frost to rain. She traveled alone, keeping to the wild paths and sleeping in barns when she could. Once or twice, she caught the scent of pursuit, hoofprints where none should be, a figure upon a distant ridge. But when she turned to look, there was nothing. When she reached the reach, the air had grown warm again. Fields stretched wide beneath the cloudy sky, and she could smell the sea far to the south. Yet there was no peace in it. Her dreams had grown darker each night, faces whispering from the shadows, her own among them. You should have stayed no one, they said. You should have let us keep you. By the time she reached Old Town's walls, Arya felt half a ghost herself. The city rose vast and white before her, its spires gleaming over the Honeywine River. The Citadel's great tower pierced the clouds, its chain of metals glinting faintly in the mist. Here the maesters kept their lore, thousands of scrolls, hundreds of secrets, and perhaps one secret too many. Arya found a tavern near the docks where sailors gathered. The place smelled of salt and ale, and the talk was loud and careless. She listened from a corner table, letting their words wash over her until she heard what she needed. Another body found by the river, one man said, face cut clean away. Same as the last three, said another. The guards say it's no work of any man, say it's a curse from the black cells beneath the citadel. Arya's fingers tightened around her cup. She waited until nightfall to move. Old Town at night was a maze of stone and shadow. The citadel's towers loomed like watchful giants above the river, their bells tolling softly in the dark. Arya slipped through the alleys, keeping to the walls, her senses sharp. The bodies had been found near the eastern quay, where the river's current slowed among the reeds. The smell of rot hung thick there. She knelt by the water's edge, scanning the mud, and found what she feared she would. Footprints again, light, Careful. A pair this time, one leading to the water, one away. She followed the ladder. They led her to an old warehouse, its doors half rotted, its windows boarded. Inside, the air was heavy and still. She drew needle. The sound came from deeper within, a soft scrape, then a wet tearing noise. She moved forward, slow as a cat. A single lantern burned upon a crate, its flame flickering. Beside it knelt a figure in a gray robe. Arya froze. The man's back was to her, but she saw what lay before him. A body sprawled upon the floor, its face gone, the skin of it lying beside the corpse, like a mask freshly peeled. The robed figure turned. His face was hidden beneath a hood, but his voice, when he spoke, was calm and cold. "You came far, Wolf of Winterfell." Arya raised her sword. "Show yourself." The man stood slowly, pulling back the hood. He was older than she expected, white hair bound in a knot, eyes pale as fog. Around his neck hung a maester's chain, though the links were tarnished and uneven. "You shouldn't have left Braavos," he said. "You woke things that were meant to sleep. Who are you?" He smiled thinly. "Once, I was called Meister Harrow. The orphan was my pupil. He sought to master death, but he lacked understanding. You, though, you carry it, the face that cannot die." Arya's grip tightened. "That face is gone." "No," Harrow said, stepping closer. "It is with me now." He raised his hand, and from the darkness behind him, something moved. A shimmer, a whisper, the faint outline of a face floating in the air like smoke. Her own face. It hovered there, lifeless yet aware, eyes hollow but watching. "Your shadow clings to you still," Harrow murmured. "It knows you. It remembers." Arya's heart hammered. "Then I'll end it." She lunged, but the lantern blew out, plunging the room into blackness. There came a voice, hers, but not hers. "You cannot kill what wears your skin." The air turned cold, and from the dark, the face began to move. Darkness swallowed Arya whole. The lantern's brief flame sputtered, then died, leaving her blind within the warehouse. The smell of blood and damp wood thickened in her throat. She could hear the slow lap of the river beyond the walls, the faint drip of water through the rafters, and something else. Breathing. But not one breath. Two. One hers, sharp and quick. The other long and even, like someone listening from very close. She stepped backward, sword raised. The boards creaked beneath her boots. "Show yourself," she said softly. A whisper brushed her ear, her own voice mocking. "I already have." A shape stirred before her. She caught the glint of eyes in the dark, pale and shifting like fish beneath a black sea. Then came the faintest sound, the slick pull of skin against skin. Arya struck. Needle flashed, cutting air, striking wood. Sparks flew as the tip scraped a beam. She turned, struck again, but her blade met only emptiness. Then cold fingers brushed her cheek. She swung hard and felt the edge bite flesh. A hiss, sharp as a snake's. Something stumbled backward, and she caught a glimpse of it, a figure half-formed, the outline of her own body, her own face rippling like water. The false Arya melted and reshaped, its features sliding from her likeness to another's, then back again. "Stop hiding!" she shouted. The figure laughed, a low, wet sound that did not belong in any living throat. "You cannot cut death, Wolfgirl. You wear his mark. You belong to him." "I belong to no one," she cried, and drove her sword forward again. The blade pierced flesh, or what felt like flesh, and struck something solid. A burst of cold shot up her arm. She ripped needle free, stumbled backward, gasping. The figure wavered, its form breaking apart like smoke in wind. For a heartbeat, the thing's face became her own once more, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Then it was gone, collapsing into a heap of gray dust that shimmered faintly before fading into the floor. The silence that followed was so deep it rang in her ears. She stood trembling, sword still raised, until the world steadied. Slowly, she lowered the blade and relit the lantern. Its flame revealed what the darkness had hidden. The old master lay on the floor, his body sprawled near the wall. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. Blood had soaked his robes, but not from any wound she could see. His face was gone, cleanly taken, as if peeled by invisible hands. And in its place, something else had begun to grow. A smear of pale skin clung to his skull like frost. It was taking form, stretching, shaping itself. She stepped closer, and her breath caught in her throat. The face forming on the dead man's skull was hers. Arya leapt backward, knocking over the lantern. Fire spilled across the floor. She ran for the door, splintered it open, and burst into the night. Behind her, the warehouse burned. The smoke rose thick and black, carrying with it the faint, terrible smell of flesh. She stood on the riverbank, her chest heaving, watching the flames consume the building until it collapsed in upon itself. Only then did she realize she was still clutching something in her hand, a small scrap of skin, cold and slick. The face had touched her and left its mark. She dropped it into the water and watched it sink. But even as it vanished beneath the current, she thought she saw it move, drifting against the flow as if alive. The next morning, Old Town was in uproar. The guards found the warehouse burned to cinders and a body within, faceless and half-charred. Whispers spread through the markets of sorcery, of dark things creeping through the Meister's halls. Arya listened from the crowd, hood drawn low, until she heard what she needed. They said the citadel had sealed one of its towers, the oldest of them all. Scholars were vanishing, men who had studied the nature of death. The archmaesters spoke little of it, save to warn their novices. There are doors in the world that must remain closed. Arya knew then where she must go. That night, she scaled the walls of the citadel as easily as a cat. Shadows moved behind narrow windows, lamplight gleaming off brass. The chains of the great tower clinked softly in the wind. When she reached the upper ledge, she found a narrow slit of an opening and slipped inside. The air within was colder than the night outside. Shelves rose like pillars, heavy with tomes bound in black leather. The silence was thick, the kind that presses upon the heart. She moved among the books, reading their titles as she passed. On the nature of souls, the boundaries of the body, the shadow that walks. Then she came to a door of iron, sealed with wax and stamped with a sigil she did not know. Beneath it, someone had scratched words into the metal with a knife. The face that was forbidden. Her pulse quickened. The lock was old but simple. She knelt, worked it open, and slipped inside. The chamber beyond was small and circular, lit by a single glass lamp that burned with blue flame. On a table lay a wooden chest, bound in chains. The smell of myrrh and rot hung in the air. Arya crossed the room and touched the lid. The chains were cold, almost frozen. She hesitated only a moment before pulling them loose. The lid creaked open. Inside lay a mask. It was her face. Not a copy, not a trick of wax or magic. It was hers. The same scar above the brow, the same curve of the mouth. Yet its eyes were closed, and its skin looked as though it breathed, faintly rising and falling with invisible air. She reached for it, and the lamp flickered. A shadow moved behind her. "I told you, wolf girl." said a voice she knew too well. "You cannot burn what death has claimed." She spun. The orphan stood there, whole and smiling. His chest bore the wound she had given him, yet no blood flowed. His eyes gleamed with a light that was not his own. "You're dead," Arya whispered. "Am I?" he asked, and stepped closer. "The god takes what he is owed. The face lives through me now." He raised his hand. The mask in the chest trembled. Its eyes opened. Arya felt her knees weaken. Her vision blurred, the world swaying around her. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of death. The mask lifted from the box and floated between them, turning slowly, its blank gaze shifting from one to the other. Then, with a whisper like a sigh, it pressed itself against the orphan's face. When he looked up again, he wore her features. "See?" he said in her voice. "There was never room for two." Arya's breath caught. For an instant she saw herself across the room, smiling, calm, alive. Then her reflection lunged. The clash of steel rang through the tower once more. She met her double's blow, sparks flying in the dark. Books fell, tables overturned, the lamp shattered, and blue fire spilled across the floor. The chain-bound chest cracked open, spilling bones like ivory teeth. Their blades met again and again, and though she fought with all her strength, Arya saw the truth in every mirrored motion. This was not an enemy she could outmatch, for it was herself, unburdened by mercy or doubt. The fire climbed the walls. The tower filled with smoke. She ducked beneath a swing, kicked her double backward, and caught sight of the window beyond. There, escape. But the false Arya's voice stopped her. "You cannot run from what you are." Arya turned. "Maybe not," she said, "but I can make sure you never follow." She drove her sword into the base of the great iron lamp, and the blue flame burst outward in a wave of searing light. The glass shattered. Fire swept the chamber, devouring parchment, cloth, flesh. The last thing Arya saw was her own face burning, smiling still. Then she leapt through the window into the cold night, vanishing into the smoke. The river caught her like a hammer. The cold struck through leather and skin, stealing breath and thought in a single instant. She tumbled beneath the surface, darkness closing over her, and for a heartbeat she knew nothing but silence and wait. Then instinct rose within her like a wolf's snarl. She kicked, broke through, and gasped into the night air. The citadel's tower burned above her, a column of blue fire against the sky. The reflection of it rippled across the water, broken and shifting. Arya fought the current, her limbs aching, the wet folds of her cloak dragging her down. At last she found the bank and crawled ashore, coughing river water onto the mud. Behind her, the flames roared. She could hear the faint shouts of bells ringing across Old Town, guards calling, and the tower's timbers groaning as they collapsed. Blue sparks rained upon the river like 1,000 fireflies. She pushed herself upright and stared. If the orphan still lived within that blaze, he was no longer a man. She had seen his flesh melt, seen her own face consume itself in light. Yet even as she watched, the fire seemed to twist upon itself, forming shapes, faces, rising and fading in the smoke, hers among them. Arya turned away. She did not stop until the city's walls were behind her. She rode north for days, through wild country where the reach thinned into hills and lonely woods. Her horse was tired, her provisions scarce, but the rhythm of the road steadied her. Every sunrise felt sharper, every night colder, as if the world itself were holding its breath. When she slept, she dreamed of the mask, floating, whispering, always close. Sometimes it spoke in her voice, sometimes in none at all. You cannot kill what remembers your name, it would say, before the dream burned away. On the 7th day, she came upon a band of outlaws camped near a ruined sept. They watched her approach with wary eyes, knives half drawn. Their leader, a woman with scarred cheeks and a ragged black cloak, stepped forward. "Name yourself, traveler." "Arya of Winterfell," she said. "I seek no trouble." The woman laughed softly. "Winterfell's wolf girl? I thought you were a ghost." "Not yet." The outlaw studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the fire. "Come then. Ghost or not, you look half dead. Warm yourself." Arya hesitated, but the night wind cut like glass. She sat by the fire, took the bread they offered, and said little. The outlaws spoke of the south, of fires in Old Town, of rumors that the citadel had been attacked by shadows. Arya listened, silent. When they asked her where she was bound, she said only, "North." Before dawn, she left them sleeping. The road brought her to a quiet village at the edge of the Blackwater Rush. Farmers there spoke of strange things. A man who passed through wearing a hood, whose voice changed each time he spoke. Animals found dead with their faces missing. Children dreaming of a girl with wolf's eyes. Arya's stomach turned cold. The orphan should have been dead, burned and gone. But the tales, they followed her like her own shadow. That night, as she rested in a barn, she woke to the sound of footsteps outside. Slow, careful. She reached for needle, every sense sharp. The door creaked open and moonlight spilled across the straw. A shape moved inside. Arya struck first. Her blade flashed, cutting the air. The intruder fell back with a cry, and in the pale light, she saw the face of a boy, no older than 12, his hands raised in terror. "Wait! Don't kill me!" he gasped. She froze. "What are you doing here?" "I saw you come in," the boy stammered. "Thought you might be... him." "Who?" The boy swallowed. "The man with no face. He came 3 nights ago, spoke to my mother at the door. When she answered, he took her face." Arya's throat tightened. "Where is he now?" The boy shook his head. "Gone, but he said he'd come back for me next." Arya's grip eased slightly. "He won't." She left the barn before sunrise, the boy's frightened eyes following her. The wind carried the faint smell of smoke from the south. She reached the ruins of the Trident by dusk. The river glimmered red beneath the setting sun, as though still stained by the blood of the dead. Here, years ago, her father's banners had flown. Here, the songs said, kings had died. And now, something else waited. Across the water, a figure stood upon the far bank, motionless, cloaked, watching. Arya's breath caught. She stepped forward, sword drawn. "Show yourself." The figure did not move. Then, slowly, it lifted its head. The face beneath the hood was hers, not the mask she had burned, nor the reflection from the tower. This one looked alive, flushed with blood, eyes bright, hair stirring in the wind. "You should have stayed dead," it called across the river. The voice was hers, perfect and steady. Arya's heart pounded. "You're no ghost." "No," the double said. "I am what you left behind." The reflection raised its hand. The air shimmered, and the river began to stir. Something moved in the water. Faces, dozens of them, forming and dissolving, their mouths opening in silent screams. The surface broke, and out of it rose figures of flesh and shadow, their features pale and shifting. All of them wore her likeness. Arya backed away, breath sharp. "No," she whispered. "No more." The reflection stepped onto the shore, moving as one. She turned and ran. Branches whipped her face as she plunged into the trees. Behind her came the sound of many feet, soft, but relentless, the whisper of her own voice repeating, "You cannot kill what wears your name." She stumbled, fell, rose again. The forest blurred around her. Moonlight flickered through the branches, turning the path into silver knives. At last, she burst into a clearing and stopped. A figure stood there waiting, cloaked in black, his back to her. When he turned, she saw the red and white mask of the faceless men, and beneath it, eyes she knew. "Jaqen," she breathed. He inclined his head. A man thought this might end so. "They're following me. I see them." His hand went to the hilt of a dagger. "The god has been cheated too long. He demands balance." Arya shook her head. "You mean to kill me? If that will restore the peace he keeps, yes. Then you'll have to earn it." The forest filled with movement. The reflections had come, silent as ghosts. They closed in, a ring of pale Aryas beneath the moonlight, every face hers, every eye watching. Jaqen drew his blade. "The many-faced god accepts all offerings." Arya raised her sword. "Then let him take theirs." The first reflection lunged. She met it with steel, cutting deep, but it fell without blood, dissolving into mist. Another came, then another, each falling, reforming. Jaqen fought beside her, his movements fluid, deadly. Yet for every shadow they struck down, two more stepped forward. The clearing was filled with the sound of steel and whispering voices. Arya's strength began to fail. Sweat and blood stung her eyes. She stumbled, and one of the reflections caught her wrist, pulling her close. She saw her own face, calm and merciless. "You cannot win," it said. Arya twisted free, driving needle into its heart. "I don't need to win," she said. "I just need to end it." She looked toward Jaqen. "How?" He hesitated only a moment. "Give the god what he was owed." She understood. Slowly, she raised her sword to her chest. If the face wanted her life, then let it take it, on her terms. "Valar Morghulis," she whispered, and drove the blade through her own heart. The world exploded in white. When she opened her eyes, there was silence. The forest was empty. No reflections, no Jaqen, no sound but the rustle of leaves. Her sword lay beside her, slick with her own blood. But the wound was gone. She touched her chest, whole. The mask of her own face lay upon the ground before her, cracked through the middle. For a long moment she only stared. Then she rose, took up needle, and walked north. The wind carried the faintest whisper behind her, soft, fading. A girl has paid her debt. Arya did not look back. The north greeted her with gray skies and endless snow. The air was sharp enough to cut the lungs, and the wind sang through the bare branches like the mourning of ghosts. Arya rode through it all, wrapped in silence. Each hoofbeat seemed to echo from the past. The roads she had walked, the faces she had worn, the blood she had spilled. By the time she reached the lands beyond the neck, the world felt both familiar and foreign. The rivers were frozen, the hills white and wide. She passed villages half buried in snow, where children stared from doorways, eyes wide, whispering her name as though she were a tale told by firelight. "Arya Stark," they murmured. "The wolf girl who killed the Night King, the ghost who wears no face." She said nothing. The less said of ghosts, the better. Winterfell appeared on the horizon like a dream half remembered, a crown of gray towers rising through the storm. Smoke drifted from its chimneys, a sign of life and warmth. Her heart ached to see it. She had left as a child and returned as a shadow more than once, but this time felt different. The weight of what she carried clung to her still, unseen but heavy. As she rode through the open gates, the guards stepped aside without question. News of her arrival had already reached the keep. She could see it in their faces, a mixture of awe and unease. She dismounted in the courtyard. Snow fell in soft flakes, melting in her hair. When the doors to the great hall opened, she saw Bran waiting. The firelight danced across his still face. He looked older, colder somehow, as though the roots of the weirwoods had wound their way around his heart. "You found what you were looking for," he said. It was not a question. "I found something," she answered, "but I don't know if it was what I sought." He nodded slowly, his pale eyes searching her. "The many-faced god touched you once. His shadow still lingers." "I broke his curse," she said. Bran's gaze shifted toward the flames. "Curses are never broken, only passed on. The balance you restored will not last forever." She frowned. "Then what am I supposed to do?" He smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. "You do what wolves do, Arya. You watch, you hunt, you remember." In the days that followed, Winterfell felt at once a refuge and a cage. Arya moved through its halls as one who remembered every stone, yet the faces were strange now. New guards, new servants. Even the familiar seemed changed by time. Sansa ruled in Bran's name, steady and stern. She welcomed Arya with open arms, but there was a distance in her eyes, a cautiousness born of too many years of loss. "You've seen too much darkness," Sansa said one night as they shared a quiet supper. "You wear it like armor." "Better armor than grief," Arya replied. Sansa looked at her long, then reached across the table. "Whatever you became out there, you're home now. Let that be enough." But Arya could not rest. Not truly. Each night she dreamed again of the faces, the reflections that had hunted her, the orphan, the burning tower. She would wake before dawn, heart pounding, to find the snow outside her window smooth and untouched. Yet sometimes she thought she heard footsteps just beyond the door. Once, in the dim before sunrise, she glimpsed a shape upon the battlements, a tall figure in a black cloak watching the courtyard. When she went to look, it was gone. Only a single coin lay upon the stone, dark as iron, stamped with the sigil of the many-faced god. Her blood turned to ice. She took the coin to Bran that morning. "He's still out there," she said. Bran held the coin in his thin fingers, turning it over. "Perhaps," he said softly, "or perhaps it is only the echo of what was." "You think I'm seeing ghosts?" He looked at her. "Aren't we all?" The snow fell heavier as winter deepened. One morning, word came from the watchtower beyond the Wolf's Wood. 2 riders found dead, faces gone. The marks were too clean, too precise for bandits. Arya didn't wait for permission. She saddled her horse and rode before dusk, following the wolf tracks that led into the trees. The forest swallowed her. Snow whispered beneath her horse's hooves, and the branches above seemed to lean closer with every mile. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a long, low sound that sent a shiver through her chest. When she found the watchtower, it was half buried in snow. The door hung open, swinging gently. Inside, 2 bodies lay upon the floor, men of the guard, both eyeless, their faces peeled away. Arya knelt beside them, the old instinct rising within her. Observe, deduce, act. The cuts were clean, the work of a trained hand, and on the wall above the corpses, something had been carved with a blade, a face for a face. She rose, scanning the shadows. The scent of blood lingered, but beneath it was another smell, faint, metallic, familiar, myrrh. She turned sharply and saw movement at the doorway. A figure stood there, cloaked and still. "Jaqen," she called. The figure stepped forward, and for a moment she thought it was him. But when the hood fell back, the face was not his. It was her father's. Arya froze. "No." Ned Stark smiled gently. "You've done well, little one." His voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep and calm. "But it's time to come home." Her sword trembled in her hand. "You're dead." "Yes," he said softly, "but you carry my face now." The figure stepped closer, and the light from the broken window fell across its features. The eyes were wrong, too dark, too knowing. Beneath the skin, something shifted, like a shadow moving beneath ice. Arya struck. Needle cut through the illusion like smoke. The figure crumpled, and when it fell, it wore not her father's face, but her own. Again. The mask rolled across the floor, coming to rest at her feet. She knelt and stared at it, the world spinning around her. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep within the forest, she heard a whisper carried on the wind, her voice calm and cold. "You cannot kill what was made of you." She rode back to Winterfell under a sky black with storm. The wind tore at her cloak, the snow biting her cheeks. By the time she reached the gates, dawn was breaking. Bran was waiting. Without a word, she dropped the mask at his feet. He stared at it for a long time, then lifted his gaze to hers. "So it ends," he said. "No," Arya whispered. "It never ends." The mask lay between them, half buried in snow. As the sun rose, its frozen surface seemed almost to breathe, and though no sound escaped it, Arya thought she saw its lips move. For the first time since Braavos, she shivered, not from the cold, but from the thought that the many-faced god might still be watching, smiling through every face she had ever worn. She turned away, her shadow stretching long upon the snow. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, lonely, unending, and Arya Stark, daughter of Winterfell, walked toward the sound, not as the girl who had fled death, but as the woman who had learned to live beside it. The snows did not stop that winter. They came in waves that buried the land beneath white silence, swallowing road and field alike, until the north itself seemed to sleep. Winterfell's walls groaned beneath the weight of frost, and each night the wind howled through the battlements like a chorus of the dead. Arya kept to herself. By day, she trained alone in the yard, her breath steaming in the frozen air, her blade flashing like a whisper. The men who watched her from the walls spoke quietly of the wolf girl and her shadow, for she fought as though against unseen foes. By night, she walked the godswood. The heart tree was ancient beyond reckoning, its red eyes ever weeping. Sometimes, she thought she could feel it watching her, as she had once felt the eyes of the faceless god, cold, patient, endless. She would kneel in the snow, whispering to her father's memory, though no answer came. Until one night, it did. She heard it in the wind, a voice soft and low carried between the branches. "Arya." She froze, her breath clouding before her. The voice came again, closer. "Arya, daughter of Winterfell." Her hand went to Needle's hilt. "Who's there?" The snow stirred before her, whirling into a faint shape, a figure, half shadow, half light. It bore no face, and yet she thought she saw her father's eyes within it. "You cannot run from what follows," the voice said. "The gift you denied has not forgotten you." Arya's heart hammered. "I broke the curse. I killed it." "Death cannot be killed," the whisper answered. "It only waits." She stepped back, snow crunching beneath her boots. "Then let it wait forever." The wind howled, and the shadow faded into nothing. Only the heart tree remained, its red sap gleaming like fresh blood. Arya turned and left the godswood without looking back. By morning, the shadow's words still echoed in her mind. Bran said nothing when she told him, only stared through her with that distant calm. "You think it's coming for me again?" she said. "I think," he murmured, "that it never left you. The many-faced god does not claim his servants lightly. He sent you to Westeros for a purpose. Perhaps that purpose is not yet fulfilled." Arya frowned. "Then what am I supposed to do? Wait until another mask crawls out of the dark?" Bran's pale eyes drifted toward the window, where snow fell in endless silence. "The godswood is older than the faceless men, older even than Braavos. Perhaps there is something in the old gods that he cannot touch." She understood what he meant. The red gods of the north had never answered her prayers, but they had watched, always watched. That night, she went back to the heart tree. She knelt in the snow and placed her hand upon its trunk. The bark was cold, rough beneath her palm. She closed her eyes and whispered, "If you're listening, help me end this." At first, there was nothing. Then, slowly, the air changed. The wind stilled, the snow ceased to fall, and the world grew terribly quiet. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer alone. A woman stood before the tree, clothed in furs white as snow, her hair black as a raven's wing. Her eyes shone red in the darkness. Arya reached for her sword, but the woman raised a hand. "Do not fear, wolf girl. I am not one of his." "Who are you?" Arya asked. "Once, men called me the drowned daughter," the woman said. "Long before Braavos rose from the sea, I served the many-faced god before your temple was built, before he learned to hide behind faces." Arya stared. "You're saying he's not a god?" The woman's smile was sad. "He is death-given form, nothing more. A shadow that learned to hunger. He feeds upon fear, upon the shape of endings. But he is not eternal." Arya's pulse quickened. "Then he can be destroyed." "Not destroyed," the woman said. "Bound, contained. You carry his mark, the face that would not die. It can seal him again if you are willing to give what he demands." Arya swallowed hard. "And what's that?" "Your name," the woman whispered. "Truly, this time. Forever." The offer hung in the cold air like a blade. Arya looked up at the heart tree, its red leaves trembling. She thought of Winterfell, of Sansa and Bran, of Jon somewhere beyond the wall. She thought of Needle and the long road that had led her here. All of it had begun with her name. Without it, she was nothing again. "No," she said quietly. "I've been no one before. Never again." The woman's red eyes softened. "Then you will face him as yourself. But be warned, the god will not yield. He will come through your memories, your blood, your very shadow. When he does, do not let him wear you." With those words, the woman faded into the snow. The wind rose again, howling through the branches. Arya returned to the keep and gathered what she needed: food, steel, a cloak thick enough for the long road. She told no one of her plan. Bran already knew, she suspected, but he did not stop her. Before dawn, she rode from Winterfell for the last time. North she went, past the ruins of Deepwood Motte, through the frozen rivers where the trees grew black and twisted. Days turned to weeks. She slept beneath the stars, hunted what game she could, and listened to the silence that followed her like a second shadow. It was near the edge of the haunted forest that she first felt him again. The world grew still. The birds fell silent. Even the snow seemed to hold its breath. She turned slowly and saw a figure standing among the trees. At first, she thought it another ghost of memory, but when it stepped forward, she saw that it was Jaqen Hagar. His cloak was torn, his hair streaked with frost, his eyes dark and empty. "A man has come to take you home," he said softly. Arya's hand went to her sword. "You're not him?" He smiled, a cold, perfect smile. "Does it matter? All faces are one in the end." His voice shifted as he spoke, deepening, echoing, until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The gift was spurned. The debt remains." The snow swirled around him, and when it settled, the face before her was not Jaqen's anymore. It was hers, again. "Not this time," Arya said, raising her blade. The figure laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "You cannot fight yourself." "Maybe not," she said, "but I can fight for myself." Then she attacked. Steel met shadow. The air burned with frost. She fought like the wolf she was, every strike guided by years of training, by rage, by love, by all that she had ever been. The reflection moved like water, faster than thought, but Arya's heart was steady. She struck once, twice, 3 times, until her blade pierced the figure's chest. Light flared. The shadow screamed, its voice 100 voices at once. Faces flickered across its skin. Jaqen, the orphan, her father, her mother, even Sansa, all dissolving into smoke. Then it was gone. Arya fell to her knees, breath steaming in the cold air. The snow around her had turned to ash. She did not know if she had won or merely survived. The wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere far away, a wolf howled. She rose slowly and looked northward, where the wall stood faint upon the horizon. Beyond it lay the true north, the land of endless winter, where even death might rest. She sheathed her sword, her breath calm now, and began to walk. Behind her, the snow covered her tracks as though she had never been there at all. Days blurred into nights, and the nights into something deeper, long stretches of white silence broken only by the wind. The farther north Arya went, the smaller the world seemed to become. The sky sank close above her, gray and heavy, and the land lay still beneath an endless shroud of snow. Her horse perished in the cold before the frost fangs, and she buried it with a handful of frozen earth, whispering a soft farewell. After that, she walked. It felt as though the north were swallowing her whole. The rivers were frozen, the trees black and twisted, their branches clawing the air. Once she thought she heard a distant horn echo through the mountains, but the sound died quickly, leaving only the moan of the wind. Each step grew harder, each breath shallower. Still, she pressed on, for the whisper of her name seemed to follow wherever she went. The drowned daughter's words haunted her. "He will come through your blood, your shadow." When the aurora lit the sky one night, green fire rippling through the stars, Arya built a small camp by a ridge of stone. She sat by the meager flame, sharpening needle, her breath rising in pale plumes. The wolf that had been following her for days waited just beyond the circle of light, eyes yellow and knowing. "Go on," she murmured. "You're free." But the beast only sat there, silent. Somewhere deep in its gaze, she thought she saw a ghost's reflection, the memory of another time, another pack. When she slept, she dreamed of the Hall of Faces. The air smelled of salt and blood. The torches burned blue, and in their light, she saw her own face upon the wall, eyes open now. It whispered without moving its lips, "You cannot flee what is already within you." She woke to silence, the fire dead, the sky pale with dawn. The wolf was gone, and in its place lay a single coin pressed into the snow. Black iron, marked by the tear of the many-faced god. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. By noon, she had reached the foothills near the ruined forts that once watched the wall. Nothing lived there now, only stones half buried by frost, old banners shredded by time. But something had been there recently, footprints, small and light, leading toward the ridge. Arya followed. They led to a cave mouth, narrow and half hidden beneath a fall of ice. She felt the cold spill from it as though the mountain itself were breathing. The prince vanished into the dark. She hesitated, drawing needle. Then she stepped inside. The tunnel wound downward, deeper and deeper. The air was still, the silence thick. Once or twice she thought she heard a whisper, a faint rustle, like someone walking ahead of her. But when she stopped to listen, there was nothing. At last, the passage opened into a vast cavern lit by a pale blue glow. Ice coated the walls like glass, reflecting the light in ghostly ripples. And there, in the center, stood the heart tree. It was smaller than the one in Winterfell, but older, its roots twisted into the frozen floor. The eyes carved into its trunk glowed faintly red, bleeding sap that froze as it fell. Before it knelt a figure. Arya's breath caught. The man's hair was white as snow, his cloak torn and rimed with frost. His face, though she could see only part of it, was hers. He turned slowly, and she saw the scar above the brow, the one she had carried since Braavos. "I told you it would end here," said her own voice. The sight rooted her to the spot. "What are you?" she whispered. "I am what remains," the reflection said. "The shadow that lives when the light dies. You gave me life when you denied his gift." "No," she said, stepping forward. "I killed you. I burned your face." "Did you?" The figure smiled faintly. "You cannot destroy what you created, Arya Stark. You fed me with your rage, your vengeance, your fear. Every life you took in his name made me stronger." Arya raised her sword. "Then I'll end it now." The reflection rose, mirroring her every movement. Needle met needle. The sound rang through the cavern, cold and sharp. They fought without breath, without pause, each strike a mirror of the other. Arya's arm burned, her lungs screamed for air, but she pressed on. The ice beneath their feet cracked with each blow. Shards flew. The sound of steel echoed like thunder. Then, in a heartbeat of stillness, the reflection caught her blade, twisted it, and sent it skidding across the ice. Arya fell hard, pain lancing through her shoulder. The reflection stood over her, eyes bright with cruel calm. "You cannot kill death," it said softly, "but you can join him." As it raised its sword, something moved behind it. The heart tree's eyes flared red, and its roots burst from the ice, coiling like serpents. They wrapped around the reflection's legs, its arms, its throat. The figure screamed, voice splitting into 1,000 echoes, men, women, children, all at once. Arya scrambled to her feet, watching in frozen awe as the roots dragged the reflection toward the tree. Its skin began to crack, light spilling from within, bright as dawn. The voice of the drowned daughter whispered in her mind, "The face that would not die can bind him again." Arya understood. She ran forward, seized the reflection's face in both hands, and pressed it against her own. The world vanished. She fell through darkness. The cold was gone now, replaced by an endless quiet. She saw faces floating around her, her father, her mother, Jaqen, the orphan, the girl she had once been. All looked at her with the same eyes. "You are no one," they whispered, "and everyone." Arya gritted her teeth. "I am Arya Stark of Winterfell." The words echoed through the dark like thunder. The faces began to fade, one by one, until only her own remained. It smiled, not with malice, but with something almost like peace. Then it was gone. She awoke beneath the heart tree. The cavern was still. The reflection was gone. Only her own sword lay beside her, its steel rimed with frost. When she stood, she saw that the roots had grown around the tree's base in a new pattern, like a mask, half buried in ice. Arya touched it gently. The wood was warm beneath her fingers. Outside the cave, the snow had stopped. The world lay still beneath a pale sky, and the wind carried no whispers now. She walked until she found the ridge again. From there, she could see the wall far to the south, its great shadow stretching across the world. Beyond it, the faint spark of dawn. The wolf was waiting at the edge of the clearing. It padded toward her, silent and unafraid, and she knelt to meet its gaze. "Go on," she said softly. "Tell them I'm coming home." The wolf turned and bounded through the snow, its shape vanishing into the distance. Arya watched until it was gone. Then she looked north again, to the white horizon where the sky met the endless plain. Her journey was not finished. She felt it in her bones. Somewhere beyond that frozen line, the true end waited, patient as death itself. She drew her cloak tighter and began to walk, her steps leaving a trail that the wind would soon erase. And though she never looked back, the sound of the weirwood's sigh followed her, a slow, soft whisper that might have been farewell or a promise. For many leagues, there was nothing but the sound of her own footsteps upon the frozen earth. The sky had turned to iron, and the land stretched on in every direction, a white desert, endless and hollow. Arya could no longer tell how many days had passed. The sun was a pale ghost that rose and fell without warmth, and the stars above seemed dimmer with each night. She did not feel fear anymore, only the quiet determination of one who has walked too far to turn back. The wind no longer stung her cheeks. It merely whispered her name, sometimes tender, sometimes cruel. At times she thought she saw figures upon the horizon, faces half glimpsed in the snow, shadows of the dead who watched her pass. Her mother's eyes, her father's frown, Gendry's smile. All were gone before she could speak. She carried only needle, wrapped in cloth to keep the frost from the steel, and a small pouch of dried meat that had long since hardened like stone. Hunger gnawed at her, but she had lived on worse. At night, she dreamed again. In her dreams, the Hall of Faces was not in Braavos, but beneath the north itself, buried deep under the roots of the world. Each face upon the wall was carved from ice, and behind them pulsed a light like the beating of a heart. One of those faces, hers, cracked open its frozen lips and whispered, "You bound him once." But shadows cannot die where there is light. When she woke, she always found herself standing, as though something had lifted her from the ground while she slept. The snow around her would be disturbed, shaped as if by other feet walking alongside her. And once, she heard laughter, low and distant, carried upon the wind. She reached the edge of the world on the 14th day. There the land fell away into a great valley where the snow shone blue as glass. In its heart stood a circle of stones, half buried by frost, and in the center of that circle, a mound of black ice rose from the ground like a frozen wound. Something inside it glimmered faintly. Arya descended the slope, her boots slipping upon the ice. The air grew colder the nearer she came to the mound, until even her breath froze upon her lips. The silence there was deeper than any she had known. No wind, no birds, no sound at all, only the faint, steady pulse of whatever slept beneath the ice. She laid a hand upon it. The surface was smooth as glass, and when she peered within, she saw movement. A shape stirred inside, tall, cloaked, and faceless. The many-faced god. Her breath caught. For all her years of training in Bravos, for all her killings in the dark, she had never seen him, not truly. And now, in the heart of winter, she looked upon the thing that had haunted her since girlhood. The god's form shifted as she watched. One moment it was her father, next her mother, then the orphan, then Jaqen, then herself. Always herself. She stepped back, heart pounding. "You should not be here," she said aloud, though there was no one to hear. "You belong to the dead." The ice cracked. A voice filled her head, soft, terrible, vast as the sea. All belong to the dead. The surface split with a thunderous sound. She stumbled backward as a blast of cold air erupted from the fissure, sharp as knives. The figure within began to rise, shards of black ice falling away like broken mirrors. Arya gritted her teeth. "I won't let you take me." The god stepped free. His face, her face, was calm and expressionless. When he spoke, it was in 100 voices. "You wear my mark," he said. "You bound me within the wood and the flesh, but you cannot bind what you carry inside. I am the silence between breaths, the stillness between heartbeats. I am death, and you are mine." Arya's fingers tightened around her sword. "Then you'll have to earn me." The god tilted his head. So mortal pride speaks again. He moved, faster than sight. She barely raised needle in time to meet the blow that came not from a blade but from his very shadow. The impact hurled her backward into the snow. The air left her lungs. Her ribs screamed. Still she rose. The god came again, and she parried, each strike echoing through the valley like thunder. His form blurred and shifted with every heartbeat, sometimes her, sometimes her father, sometimes a stranger. Each time she struck, he became someone she could not bear to hurt. She faltered when he wore Bran's face. The god smiled. "You see, all faces are one. All lives are threads of the same weave." Arya's anger burned through the cold. "Then I'll cut the weave." She lunged. Needle found the god's heart, or where a heart should have been, and the blade sank deep. For an instant, she felt it, warmth pulsing beneath the steel. Then the warmth turned to frost, creeping up the blade, into her hand, her arm, her chest. The god's eyes gleamed. "You cannot kill death." "No," Arya whispered, "but I can take you." And with that, she pulled the blade free and drove it into her own heart. Light burst from her chest, brighter than any fire. The god's scream split the valley, a sound that shook the very stones. The light spread from her body into the ice, through the ground, into the circle of stones around them. One by one, they blazed with crimson flame. The god staggered, his form unraveling, melting into the air like smoke. "Foolish child," his voice howled through her mind. "You cannot live with me inside you." Arya fell to her knees. The pain was beyond pain. Her blood felt as if it were turning to glass. Yet she held onto her name, whispering it again and again like a prayer. "I am Arya Stark of Winterfell." The god screamed once more, and then silence. When she opened her eyes, the valley was empty. The mound of ice had shattered, and snow drifted gently over its ruins. Needle lay beside her, glowing faintly with red light. She reached for it, but her hand passed through the steel like smoke. Her body was fading, turning pale and transparent. The world around her shimmered. "No," she murmured, "not yet." From somewhere behind her came the sound of soft footsteps. She turned and saw the wolf. It approached slowly, unafraid, its fur white as the snow, its eyes deep gold. It stopped before her and bowed its head. Arya smiled faintly. "Nymeria," she whispered. The wolf nuzzled her hand. Its touch was warm, solid. Her fading form steadied. Together they stood at the edge of the valley, watching as dawn broke across the far horizon. The sun's light touched the ice and turned it to gold. Arya closed her eyes and breathed once more. The air was sweet, clean, alive. The pain was gone, the whispers silenced. When she opened her eyes again, the wolf was gone, and she stood alone, but not empty. She looked southward, toward the unseen walls of Winterfell, and northward, toward the white wilds, where even death had no dominion. Then she smiled. "A girl is no one," she said softly, "but I am still Arya Stark." And with that, she walked into the light that spilled across the snow, her shadow stretching long behind her, one with the wind, one with the world, at last free. When dawn broke, it found Arya lying upon the snow, her cloak half frozen to the ground. The storm had passed, leaving the sky a dull gray, the air still and brittle. For a long while she did not move. The cold did not touch her. It was as though she had stepped beyond the reach of life and death both. Then she stirred. Her fingers brushed the snow beside her, finding the hilt of needle buried beneath a thin crust of ice. She drew it out and watched the blade catch the morning light. Its surface was smooth again, the frost gone. For the first time in years, the steel did not feel like a weapon. She rose slowly. The valley below was quiet, the mound of black ice gone, replaced by a hollow pool of water that steamed faintly in the cold. The circle of stones stood dark and broken. The many-faced god had vanished, bound or destroyed, she could not tell. But she felt something leave her, like a sigh that had lived in her bones for too long. When she looked down at her hands, she saw that the scar on her palm had faded. The iron coin, the last token of the faceless men, was gone. The air was clean again. Arya Stark was alone, but she was herself. She walked south, though she did not know how many days had passed since the battle. The sun was weak and low, never rising far above the horizon, and time seemed to drift like snow in the wind. Each step brought her closer to the lands of men, yet she did not hurry. She felt no hunger, no thirst, only a strange calm, as if the world itself had paused to let her pass. The wolves of the forest came to watch her sometimes, great gray shapes that moved beside her at a distance, silent but unafraid. She thought of Nymeria and smiled. When she reached the edge of the wolf's wood, the trees gave way to rolling hills buried beneath frost. In the far distance, she saw the faint plume of smoke that marked Winterfell. For the first time in many moons, her heart stirred. Home. The gate guards almost did not recognize her. She was thinner now, her hair streaked with white where the frost had bitten it. Yet when she lifted her head and met their eyes, the old pride of House Stark was plain. Word spread quickly. Sansa came down from the great keep before the horn had even finished sounding. The moment her sister saw her, the queen in the north broke all pretense of composure. She ran through the snow and caught Arya in her arms. "You're alive," Sansa whispered, her voice trembling. "We thought you were lost beyond the wall." Arya held her tight. "Maybe I was." They stood there a long while, the cold forgotten. Bran waited within the hall, seated beneath the carved direwolf banners. His eyes were distant, unfocused. But when Arya entered, they sharpened, and for the briefest moment she thought she saw a spark of warmth within them. "You came back," he said. "I told you I would," she replied. He tilted his head slightly. You did more than that. Arya frowned. You know what happened. I see enough, he said quietly. You faced him. Arya nodded. He's gone, for now. Bran looked toward the heart tree visible through the window. The old gods stirred when you called. The many-faced god is older than men, but not older than them. You gave him back to the cold from which he came. Sansa stepped closer. Then it's over? Arya hesitated. Nothing ever truly ends. Her brother's lips curved in something almost like a smile. No, but some things begin again. Life at Winterfell returned slowly as the long winter began to wane. The days grew longer, the air less cruel. Arya spent her mornings training with the guards and her nights walking the battlements. People greeted her as they passed, a nod, a word, a smile. She was a ghost no longer. Sometimes she would go to the Godswood and sit beneath the heart tree, tracing its bark with her fingers. The red sap still flowed from its carved eyes, but when the wind blew through the leaves, she no longer heard whispers, only peace. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, she felt a presence beside her. Bran had come, his chair moving soundlessly across the roots. You're leaving again, he said. Arya looked at him sharply. How do you know? You were never meant to stay here forever, he said simply. The wolf and the wind are kindred things. Neither can live caged. She smiled faintly. You sound like father. Bran's eyes drifted toward the horizon. He would have been proud of you. For a moment, neither spoke. The weirwood leaves shivered above them, red against the dying light. At last, Arya said, There's a world beyond the maps. I want to see what lies past it. Bran nodded. Then go. The North will remember. The next morning, she stood in the courtyard once more, cloak drawn, pack strapped across her shoulders. The air smelled of wood smoke and thawing snow. Sansa embraced her fiercely. You'll always have a home here, she said. I know. Arya smiled. But home isn't walls. It's the road that leads me back. As she turned to leave, a young stable boy ran forward, holding out a small bundle. Inside lay a dagger of Valyrian steel, its hilt wrapped in dark leather. The queen said you should have this, he stammered. Arya's fingers traced the blade's dark ripples. It felt right in her hand. Tell the queen I said thank you. Outside the gates, the wind waited, cold and sharp as truth. She took one last look at the castle, the towers of her childhood, the place she had lost and found herself 100 times. Then she mounted her horse and rode north, not south, for her heart was not yet done with the snow. For many days she followed the rivers until the trees thinned and the world turned white again. There, beneath the first stars of spring, she built a small fire beside a frozen stream. The night was still, save for the crackle of flame. When she closed her eyes, she could almost hear her father's voice once more. When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. She smiled faintly. The pack survives, she whispered. Always. A sound stirred in the distance, the soft tread of paws on snow. Arya looked up and saw a great she-wolf standing at the edge of the firelight, her coat silver gray, her eyes bright with wild knowing. Nymeria, Arya breathed. The wolf watched her for a long moment before padding forward. When she stopped within reach, Arya extended her hand. Nymeria's nose brushed her palm. Cold, real, alive. I missed you, Arya said softly. The wolf gave a low rumble, neither growl nor purr, and sat beside her by the fire. The night deepened around them, but Arya felt no fear. She looked to the stars, then to the dark horizon stretching northward. There were lands beyond the wall, and seas beyond those lands. She would find them all. She was not the girl who had left Winterfell long ago, nor the nameless servant of death she had become. She was something new, a bridge between life and shadow, between the wolf and the faceless. And when dawn came again, Arya Stark rose, her breath a cloud in the cold air, and walked onward into the wild with the wolf at her side. The snow swallowed their tracks behind them, as if the world itself wished to keep her legend a secret for a little while longer. The wolf led her north through the desolation where few men had ever walked. The wall lay far behind, a faint shadow swallowed by the horizon. Here, even the air seemed older, thin, sharp, and untouched by the breath of men. Mountains rose like spears from the frost, and rivers of pale light ran beneath the ice. In that lonely world of white and silence, Arya felt something stir deep within her, a sense that she was not merely returning to the wild, but to the beginning of all things. The snow fell endlessly, soft and steady. Nymeria trotted ahead, pausing often to glance back, her golden eyes catching the dim light. She had grown even larger than Arya remembered, her coat thick with frost, her stride powerful and silent. Sometimes other shapes followed them at a distance, wolves of Nymeria's pack, shadows slipping between the trees, their howls echoing through the frozen hills. They did not come close, but Arya felt their presence like a promise. You are not alone. At night, she shared her fire with the great she-wolf. She would sit wrapped in furs, sharpening her dagger, while Nymeria watched the darkness. The stars above burned cold and clear, strange constellations unseen from the lands south of the wall. When she slept, she dreamed of them, of rivers that ran silver, forests that whispered in tongues older than men, and the endless sea that called her name. One night she woke to find Nymeria standing alert, hackles raised. The wind had changed. It carried a sound faint but certain, the creak of wood, the sigh of waves. Arya rose at once. The sea. They walked through the night, following that ghostly music, until the land fell away into cliffs of black stone. Below, a frozen bay stretched to the horizon, the water caught mid-motion by the grip of winter. Beneath the ice, something moved. Dark shapes, slow and immense, circling far below. At the edge of the cliff stood a monolith of dark rock, half buried in snow. Runes, worn near to nothing by time, were carved upon its face. Arya brushed away the frost with her gloved hand. The marks were strange, spiraling inward like waves. As she traced them, a faint warmth pulsed beneath her fingers. Nymeria growled low, the air trembled, the ground cracked, groaning like a great beast beneath their feet. Then, from far below the ice, a light flared, cold and blue. It spread outward through the bay, veins of fire beneath glass. Arya stepped back, heart pounding. The monolith began to hum, deep and low, and in the shimmer of the light she saw faces forming in the ice, familiar and not. The many-faced god's whisper coiled through the wind. You bound me once, but the sea remembers. Arya gritted her teeth. You're finished. The light flared brighter. You are my vessel. I live in your name. Every death you've ever given belongs to me. I've given no deaths that weren't earned, she said, her voice steady. And none of them were yours. The runes beneath her hands glowed red. A great crack split the bay below, the ice shattering into jagged shards. From its heart, something rose, tall, dark, and terrible. Not a man, nor a god, but the memory of both, the many-faced god's last shadow, bound within the sea. Nymeria leapt between them, snarling, but the shadow struck with a wave of force that threw the wolf aside. Arya felt the ground give way beneath her feet. The cold swallowed her whole. She fell into darkness and light together. When she opened her eyes, she stood upon a vast plain of glass. The sky above her was black, yet full of stars, each burning with a light that seemed alive. Around her rose the shapes of all she had been. Arya, the child of Winterfell. Arya, the beggar in Bravos. Arya, the assassin with no name. They circled her like reflections in shattered mirrors. At the center of it all, the god waited. His face shifted constantly. Jaqen, the orphan, her father, her mother, her own. "This is your truth," he said. "You are mine. You wear my gift inside you still." Arya raised her chin. "Maybe, but it doesn't belong to you anymore." He smiled faintly. "Then give it away. Deny yourself again, and let the world forget you. I've been forgotten before. Then why return?" His voice echoed across the plain. "Why keep the name Stark when it brings you only pain?" "Because it's mine." She reached for the dagger at her belt, though it glowed faintly with no heat. "Because I remember who I am." The god spread his arms. "All things die, Arya Stark. All names fade. Then I'll fade as myself." She lunged. Their blades met in light and shadow. Sparks flew across the glass plain. Each time she struck, the god changed. Her brother, her sister, her mother's sorrowful eyes. But she no longer hesitated. She fought as herself, not as a servant, not as a weapon, but as a wolf. The god's laughter broke like thunder. "You cannot escape me. I am in every death you've ever dealt." "Then I'll carry you with me," she said through her teeth. "I'll carry you so you can never hurt anyone again." She drove the dagger deep into her own chest once more. The plain cracked. Light poured from the wound, blinding and pure. The reflection screamed, breaking apart into a storm of faces. The god's shape wavered, then split like smoke caught in wind. "You cannot be gone," she whispered. "Your gift is refused." The light became fire, the fire became snow, and she was falling again, back toward the waking world. She woke upon the ice, the sound of waves around her. The sea had broken free of its frozen bonds, dark water rolling beneath a gray sky. The monolith was gone, shattered into fragments that glimmered like glass. Nymeria lay beside her, unharmed, her fur damp but warm. The whispering was gone. The silence that followed was not empty. It was peaceful. Arya rose. Her breath curled in the cold air. She looked east, where the dawn was breaking over the frozen sea. Beyond it lay lands no map had ever charted. She placed a hand upon Nymeria's neck. "We're not done yet," she said softly. "The world's bigger than any god." The wolf's tail flicked once. Together they began to walk across the melting ice, toward the rising sun. Behind them, the last fragments of the monolith sank beneath the waves, and the sea swallowed its own secret. As the light grew, Arya turned once to look back. The cliffs were already vanishing behind mist. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw the outline of Winterfell far beyond them, blurred by distance and memory. She smiled. Then she faced the dawn again, her cloak snapping in the wind, the wolf padding at her side. The sea's horizon shimmered before her, vast and unending. And for the first time since she was a girl, Arya Stark felt free, not from death, nor duty, nor name, but from the shadow of who she had been. The wind whispered her name across the waves, carrying it into the unknown, until even that sound was gone, leaving only the cry of gulls and the endless hush of the world reborn. Days passed into weeks as Arya and Nymeria crossed the frozen waters. The sea, though once a prison of ice, now breathed again, its gray waves breaking beneath the thawing sun. The wind was sharp and salted. It stung her cheeks and tangled her hair, but she welcomed the bite of it. It meant she was alive, no longer bound to the stillness of gods or shadows. Each dawn she walked until her feet grew numb, and each night she built a small fire from driftwood washed up along the ice shore. Nymeria hunted what she could find: fish, seal, strange white birds that soared low over the waves. They shared every meal in silence, companions without need of words. The further east they traveled, the stranger the world became. Mountains of blue glass rose from the water like the spines of some sleeping beast. The sky burned green at twilight, and sometimes the stars seemed to fall, flaring across the horizon in silver trails. Arya felt as though she were walking through a place that had never known men, where the rules of life and death were written anew. She had no maps, no destination. She followed the pull of the horizon, trusting the road the way a wolf trusts its scent. The whispers of the god were gone now, yet sometimes, in the stillness before dawn, she thought she heard a heartbeat that was not her own. One morning, as mist rolled off the sea, she found herself standing before a wall of stone unlike any she had seen. It rose straight from the surf, dark and ancient, carved with spiraling runes like those she had touched upon the monolith. The surface pulsed faintly with light, red this time, not blue, and from somewhere within came the murmur of 1,000 voices. Nymeria snarled low, her hackles bristling. Arya laid her palm upon the stone. "It's all right," she whispered, but the warmth beneath her fingers deepened, spreading through her arm like fire. The runes flared brighter. The voices spoke as one. "Child of Winterfell, why do you seek the door of the world?" Arya swallowed. "I don't seek it. I'm walking where the road takes me." "All roads lead here," the voices replied. "All faces, all names. You have bound the shadow, but light and dark must always dance. To end one is to begin the other." Her pulse quickened. "I've fought enough gods for one life. I came here to be free." "Freedom is a word for those who have not seen what waits beyond the sea," the voices said. "Yet you came, you who have known the end and lived." The light flared again, dazzling her eyes. When she blinked, she stood not before the wall, but within it. The world beyond was not a world at all. She stood upon a shore of black sand beneath a sky of endless stars. The sea stretched out before her, calm and silver, but its reflection was wrong. The waves did not mirror the heavens above, but showed instead 1,000 faces rippling across their surface. Some she knew, some she did not, but all watched her with silent eyes. Nymeria stood beside her, growling softly. "You've come far," said a voice behind her. Arya turned. A woman stood upon the shore, cloaked in shadow, her face hidden beneath a hood. Yet something in her bearing struck a chord in Arya's heart. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman lowered her hood. Her face was Arya's, older, lined by time, her hair streaked with white, her eyes calm as still water. "I am who you will become," the woman said, "if you take the next step." Arya stared, her breath caught. "This is a trick." "No," said the older self. "This is truth. You walked beyond the gods' reach when you carried death within you. You are neither living nor dead now. You are something between." Arya shook her head. "I feel alive. You are, for a time, but every path you've walked led you here, to the shore where worlds divide. Cross the sea and you'll find what lies beyond all names." The sea shimmered, its surface rippling with faces that turned toward her, waiting. Arya's hand tightened upon Needle's hilt. I've spent my whole life trying to remember who I am. Why would I throw it away now? Her older self smiled faintly. Because you were never meant to stay in one story. You were born to walk between them. The sea's whisper grew louder, a sound like wind through leaves or 1,000 breaths taken at once. Nymeria barked, the sound sharp in the still air. Arya looked at her reflection. If I cross, she asked quietly, do I return? The older Arya's eyes softened. Does the dawn return to the night? You already know the answer. For a long moment, she said nothing. The stars above seemed to lean closer, their light falling like rain upon the sand. The faces in the water shimmered and shifted. Sansa, Bran, Jon, her mother, her father, all the lives she had left behind. Nymeria pressed her muzzle against Arya's hand. Arya knelt, stroking the wolf's fur. You should stay, she whispered. The north needs its ghosts, but the sea doesn't. Nymeria's golden eyes met hers. Then the great she-wolf turned and bounded back toward the dark shore, vanishing into mist. Arya rose alone. The older self waited, silent as a mirror. Maybe you're right, Arya said at last. Maybe I was born to walk between. She sheathed needle and stepped toward the water. But I walk on my own terms. The sea's surface shimmered as she touched it. The water did not chill her. It parted like breath. The faces beneath the waves smiled, and the stars reflected in their eyes. She turned once, looking back at the shore. The older version of herself was gone. Only her footprints remained in the sand, leading back to the wall of stone that divided worlds. Then she stepped forward. The water rose around her knees, her waist, her shoulders. Light enveloped her, soft and endless. When she opened her eyes again, she stood upon another shore, but it was not Westeros, nor any land she had known. Forests of silver trees stretched to the horizon, and rivers of light wound through the earth like veins. The air shimmered with a quiet hum, and above her the sky was vast and filled with 2 moons. A figure stood at the edge of the forest, a woman clothed in starlight. Her face was kind but strange, her eyes the color of dawn. Welcome, traveler, the woman said. Few come here by choice. Where is this place? Arya asked. The woman smiled. Where all stories meet and where new ones begin. Arya looked down at her hands. The scar upon her palm was gone. Needle was still at her side, though its blade gleamed like moonlight now. She took a deep breath. The air tasted of salt and promise. Then I'll see what stories are left to walk, she said. And as the moons rose high above, Arya Stark of Winterfell, no one, wolf, wanderer, death's unbound daughter, walked onward into the new world, her shadow long and strong behind her, while the stars wheeled overhead like eyes that had seen the end and the beginning both. The wind of the new world was soft and scented with strange flowers, their perfume mingling with the salt of unseen seas. Arya stood upon a hill of green glass, the grass beneath her boots glimmering as though lit from within. The forest behind her sang with the sound of rivers and bells, and before her lay a valley washed in twilight. It was a land neither wholly night nor day, but balanced between, as if the sun and moon shared dominion here. The starlit woman who had greeted her was gone, leaving only a path of pale stones that wound down into the valley. Arya followed, her cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. The air felt alive. With every step, she sensed the world watching, trees turning their silver leaves as she passed, rivers murmuring her name. At the heart of the valley, she found a pool, still and clear as glass. Its surface reflected 2 skies, one above her, one below, both full of stars. Beside it stood a small stone altar, worn smooth by time. Someone had placed a dagger there long ago, its hilt wrapped in leather gone gray with age. When Arya drew closer, she saw the blade was identical to Needle. She reached out, hesitated, then took it up. The steel was light and warm to the touch. The runes along its edge glowed faintly in the dim light, words in no tongue she knew. "This isn't mine," she whispered. "It is now," said a voice, calm as still water. She spun around, but the valley was empty. Only the reflection in the pool moved. Her reflection, but different. The woman in the water was older, her face lined and fierce, her eyes like the pale fire of the moon. "Who are you?" Arya asked softly. The reflection smiled. "You have carried many names, but never the truth of what you are. You are not the god's servant. You are not the child of Winterfell. You are the bridge, the path between death and life, shadow and sun." Arya frowned. "That sounds like another riddle from Bravos." "Perhaps, but even riddles are only truths in disguise." The reflection raised her hand and the pool rippled. Within its depths, images began to form. Winterfell cloaked in snow, her siblings in their separate destinies, the pack that still endured, Sansa upon her throne, Bran beneath the weirwood, Jon beyond the wall, walking with ghosts and wildlings both. "They are your beginning," the voice said, "but not your end." "I've left them behind," Arya murmured. "They don't need me now." "No," said the reflection, "but the world does." The pool stilled again, showing a vast ocean of mist stretching into darkness. Shapes stirred within it, faces half-formed, voices whispering of wars yet unbegun, of kingdoms rising and falling. Arya stepped back. "I'm done with gods and their games. I won't fight anyone's war again." "You fought death itself," said the voice, "and still you live. Do you think such power fades? The shadow you bound was only part of a greater whole. The balance must be kept. And now, when the darkness rises again, something must stand against it." Arya's hand tightened around the hilt of the dagger. "And that something is me?" The reflection nodded. "You have already crossed the line between worlds. Only you can walk where others cannot." The valley grew still. The wind hushed, the rivers fell silent. Even the stars above seemed to pause, waiting. Arya looked up at them and felt the weight of 100 lives pressing against her heart. She had walked through death, across seas and shadows, but always she had walked forward. If this was another path, then she would walk it too. "Very well," she said quietly, "but I'll choose my own road." The reflection smiled once more and vanished. When she left the valley, dawn was breaking for the first time in this strange land. The sky burned gold and red, and the air shimmered as if waking from a dream. As Arya climbed the far ridge, she saw something beyond the horizon, a vast city built of light and stone, its towers rising like the fingers of the gods. Bridges of crystal spanned a silver river, and the sound of distant bells drifted through the air. She felt no fear, only curiosity. Nymeria would have loved this place, she thought. Perhaps her spirit still ran beside her, unseen in the long grass. At the crest of the ridge, she paused to rest. From her pack, she took a small scrap of parchment, the last map she had drawn before leaving Westeros. Its ink was faded now, its edges frayed, the known world small and contained upon its surface. Beyond the eastern edge, she had once written 3 words: "What lies beyond?" She smiled and tucked the map away. The answer was here, unfolding before her with every step. As she descended toward the shining city, she saw figures moving along the roads, people clad in garments of every color, their faces strange but kind. They looked at her as though they had been expecting her. Some bowed their heads, others whispered her name, not as fear but as greeting. At the city gates stood an old man robed in silver, his eyes as bright as polished steel. "Traveler," he said, "the council has dreamed of you. The winds spoke of a wolf who walks between worlds. Will you enter?" Arya hesitated. "I'm no queen, no god's chosen." The old man smiled. "Perhaps not, but sometimes the world chooses for itself." He stepped aside, and the gates opened before her, silent and vast. Inside, the streets were paved with white stone. Fountains sparkled in the sunlight, and everywhere she looked, people were building. Houses, bridges, towers that gleamed like mirrors. It was a city of beginnings, not endings. Children ran past her, laughing, their voices echoing against the walls. One of them stopped to look up at her and said, "Are you the wolf from the old stories?" Arya knelt, meeting the child's curious gaze. "Maybe," she said. "Do you believe in stories?" The child nodded solemnly. "Stories make the world." Arya smiled. "Then make good ones." She rose and walked on. At the heart of the city stood a great hall built of translucent stone. The doors opened as she approached, and inside she found an empty throne carved from a single piece of crystal. Upon its armrest lay a single mask, white as snow, smooth and featureless. She touched it, and for a moment she felt the weight of her past, every face she had worn, every life she had touched. The mask shimmered and dissolved into light. A voice whispered from the air itself. "The world remembers you, Arya Stark. No one and everyone. Wolf of Winterfell, daughter of the North, keeper of the balance." Arya took a slow breath. "Then let the world remember me for what I choose, not what I was." She turned from the throne and stepped out into the sunlight. The city hummed with life, the sea glittered beyond, and the wind smelled of new beginnings. She walked on, her shadow long across the shining stone, until it joined with the countless others moving through that land, a wanderer among wanderers, the girl who had once worn death's face now walking where life itself was reborn. And somewhere in the high, bright air above her, a wolf's howl rose, not of warning or sorrow, but of triumph, echoing across the strange and endless sky.